Hi, I'm Jim, and today, I want you to prepare yourself for a truth that might completely shift how you see the avoidantly attached person in your life. They're not indifferent, not over you, and certainly not as moved on as they appear. In fact, they may be quietly obsessed with you not in how they act, but in what they won't admit. This video will pull back the curtain on suppressed emotions where silence, distance, and control aren't signs of detachment, but of fear and blocked longing. From obsessively watching your stories, remembering every small detail about you, to living in a fantasy version of the relationship they're more entangled than you think, I'll show you how to spot this hidden obsession, and more importantly, how to free yourself from being emotionally entangled in it. I've built this video using analysis based on original content under fair use, strictly for education and awareness. If you've been searching for clarity or even just trying to make sense of the avoidance mixed signals, subscribe, turn on notifications, and watch until the end. Because by the end, you won't just understand them better, you'll understand yourself and how to walk away from this cycle with the self-respect and peace you deserve. We're often deceived by the cold exterior and seemingly indifferent attitude of avoidantly attached individuals. They don't text much, go silent for days, or disappear without explanation, and from that, it's easy to assume they've let go, that we never mattered, that it was always one-sided. But if you've ever stayed up late wondering, did I ever mean anything to them? Today I want you to know this. Their heart isn't empty, it's overwhelmed by an obsession they can't manage. This obsession isn't healthy or romantic. It's a chaotic, conflicted pull between desire and fear. They are drawn to you, yet terrified of closeness. They crave connection, but panic at intimacy. So they wear the mask of indifference, because it's the only armor they've learned to use. I don't say this to make you cling to hope. Quite the opposite, I say it so you can see the truth behind their silence. Their distance isn't a reflection of your worth. It's a mirror of their unresolved emotional war. According to the original content cited here under fair use, this hidden obsession reveals itself in subtle but intense behaviors. They watch your stories within 2 minutes of posting, never react but know what you had for breakfast, where you went last weekend, and who you spent time with. They track your life from a distance like it's their lifeline, all while insisting, we should go our separate ways. And you who once hurt thinking you were never enough need to hear this loud and clear. You were never invisible, and you were never insignificant. However, understanding this doesn't mean you should return, forgive, or wait. Your mission isn't to make them regret losing you, it's to reclaim your emotional sovereignty. The truth is, once you realize they act this way because they're not emotionally equipped to face their feelings, you also reclaim your power. You don't need to prove anything, nor do you need to sacrifice more. You only need one thing: to come home to your own worth, where love is mutual, respect is natural, and you're not chasing someone who's not ready to show up. If you've ever asked, do they still care? I invite you to ask instead, do I still care about myself? Because only by anchoring your sincerity and self-respect in yourself can you exit the maze of someone who's always half present. They might obsess over you, but only you can decide. Will their obsession become your burden or your liberation? And once we've peeled back the cold exterior that avoidants hide behind to mask their inner obsession, it's time we look directly at how this obsession plays out in real life, even if they try to hide it at all costs. The truth is, avoidant obsession doesn't show up in what they say, it shows up in what they quietly do. That brings us to the next essential part, the visible signs of avoidant obsession, so you can finally see what's been happening beneath the silence. The first and most common sign is surveillance. It might sound dramatic, but you'd be surprised by the level of silent monitoring avoidants carry out after a breakup. They might not text you, comment, or like any of your posts, but they know what you posted, when you posted it, who you were with, and what you had for lunch. They're often the first to watch your story at 7 if they've unfollowed you. And this isn't casual curiosity, it's a symptom of unresolved emotional obsession, disguised as distance. They need to keep tabs on your life as a way to feel some form of control and connection without risking vulnerability. But it doesn't stop online. This surveillance often spills into the real world. They might randomly show up at a coffee shop they know you frequent, or they'll casually ask a mutual friend, how's she doing? In a tone so neutral it sounds like idle chatter. But behind that small question is a silent, emotional mission, gather emotional intelligence. Are you over them? Are you dating someone new? Do you still think about them? It's a quiet operation carried out behind a mask of indifference. The paradox is that the more they act like they don't care, the more obsessed they actually are. Because they can't express their emotions directly out of fear of being hurt or losing control, they keep you under silent surveillance. And that behavior can leave you confused. Why did they disappear but still watch everything I post? That's why I want you to see this for what it is. Silent surveillance isn't love, it's fear in disguise, and a deep need to control what they can't emotionally handle. You don't need to respond. You don't need to post story traps or curated content to get their attention. The truth is, every time you give emotional weight to their watching, you allow that obsession to linger in your life. Instead, what you can and should do is return to the center of your own world, where you live not to be watched, but to feel, grow, and shine. You were not born to be quietly monitored, you were born to be fully seen, heard, and respected. And if they can't step out of their shadow and into mutual connection, then your stepping away isn't abandonment, it's a self-respecting act of courage. From the hidden surveillance we explored earlier, we now enter an even more intricate and private territory where obsession no longer manifests in visible actions, but lives in memory, in every small detail stored like a private collection no one else sees. This is where the memory palace begins to emerge. An avoidant may never mention your name again, never interact, and never speak of you publicly, but in their mind, you still exist in vivid, colorful detail. They remember how you take your coffee sugar or not, your favorite music, what you said during your first fight. Things you've long forgotten they've preserved, like a secret collector never displaying, yet never discarding. This might leave you puzzled. Why would someone who acts so indifferent hold on to so much? Because for avoidance, memory is the only place they feel safe enough to love you without risking rejection or pain. In memory, you never leave. In memory, you are always kind, always close. That's why they cling to the past. They delay real reconnection because the imaginary relationship in their mind gives them just enough emotional fulfillment to avoid growth while also keeping them stuck. From there, the obsession shapeshifts again, this time into something more subtle: comparison compulsion. Avoidants don't just remember you, they use you as the emotional gold standard for everything new. Every new interaction, whether a date or a casual conversation, is unconsciously measured against you. She doesn't make me laugh like she did. He doesn't look at me the same way. These thoughts swirl constantly, often unconsciously, but they're real. Yet the comparison isn't one-directional. They also compare themselves to your new person, whether it's someone you're dating or just a friend in a photo. It can spiral into deep insecurity. Are they better than me? Will she choose them over me? And though they never say it, this fuels odd behaviors, reaching out suddenly, then disappearing again. The key insight here is, they're not fighting for you, they're fighting for how they exist in your mind. And that leads us into another form of obsession, control obsession. Avoidants want to control how you see them. They want you to believe they're fine, strong, unaffected. Every action is calculated to maintain just enough distance, close enough that you don't forget them, but far enough that they aren't emotionally exposed. They want you thinking about them but not needing them. They want you to be available but never take initiative. Ironically, while they fear being controlled, they're obsessively trying to control your emotional investment. And when reality becomes too unpredictable, too emotionally intense, they retreat into their favorite escape, the fantasy relationship. In their mind, you still love them, still understand them, still wait for them. In their imagination, there's no fear of failure, no risk of rejection, no effort required. They imagine deep conversations, healing hugs, perfect endings. And tragically, these fantasies become just satisfying enough to rob them of the need for real action. Why risk vulnerability when they can love you perfectly in their head? But this fantasy keeps them trapped in their fear loop. It blocks emotional maturity. It prevents reconnection. And you, the one who once loved them deeply, need to see this clearly. Their avoidance, their distance, even their ghosting are not because you weren't enough. They happen because they are not strong enough yet to love someone with full presence and true courage. If you find yourself on the other side of that silence, someone who tried, who waited, who asked the hard questions, then this is the truth I want to offer you. You do not need to become someone worthy enough for them to return. You only need to return to yourself clear, kind, and grounded in self-respect. Because when they choose to keep you in memory, comparison, and fantasy, that's your sign to live in reality, move forward, and give real love to the only person who's shown up fully, you. Moving into the next stage of the avoidant obsession portrait, we encounter one of its most profound but hidden manifestations, the regret spiral. This is when those anonymous story views, comparison loops, and sweet memories fade into a quieter, inner storm. They begin rewinding and replaying moments, drowning in countless, "I should have," "Why didn't I?" and "Did I ruin something good?" They internally question, "Why did I shut down when she needed me? Why didn't I express myself then? Did I end our bond?" These aren't fleeting thoughts. They loop over and over like a broken record. Each replay intensifies the ache, deepening their guilt and regret. Hidden beneath this loop is a relentless emotional tug-of-war. Part of them wants to make amends. Part of them fears confronting old wounds. When they lose their safe zone of emotional detachment, they become engulfed in their own emotional failure, realizing that fear, not your lack, drove them to push you away. What's heartbreaking is that this spiral doesn't result in healing action. There's no heartfelt apology call, no gentle message to build bridge. They spiral deeper into their own regrets, lost in the chasm between memory and abandonment. You might catch traces of this regret, a late-night message, a wistful sigh, or a faint phrase like, "I still think about us." But these are tiny ripples, not a wave of growth strong enough to truly hold space for you. They reflect sorrow, not readiness, guilt, not transformation. If you're holding out for them to show up with a grand gesture of remorse, I urge you to stop. Because their spiral in regret doesn't allow them to fully emerge. It doesn't produce someone strong enough, emotionally capable enough, to meet you where you are equal, present, healed, and ready to love again. After we delved into the memory palace, where avoidants preserve every small detail about you, then explored comparison compulsion, control obsession, and fantasy relationships in part 3, we have touched the heart of how their minds are trapped in the past, fantasies, and control. But this is still not a complete portrait. Beneath all that lies a deeper, internal battlefield of conflicted emotions and psychological consequences, which brings us to part 4, internal turmoil and psychological consequences. 2. Regret spiral. Once they step away from their memory palace and face their suppressed fears and memories, avoidants often spiral into a deep, repetitive regret, what we call the regret spiral. In this mental loop, they constantly replay moments in their head, overwhelmed by countless, "What if I had? Why didn't I say? Did I ruin something good?" These aren't passing thoughts. They loop with suffocating intensity, amplifying their guilt. They realize they pushed you away not because of any fault of yours, but because they weren't strong enough emotionally. Yet they're stuck, wanting to reconcile but unsure how to fix things in a way that feels worthy. Over time, guilt plus inability forms a tangled loop that paralyzes them. Trigger hypervigilance. They don't just live in regret, they become hypervigilant. They avoid or seek out any triggers that might remind them of you, that old song, the coffee shop you once frequented, or even a photograph. These reminders can spring emotional storm or push them into avoidance. They either can't bring themselves to revisit those locations, or they suddenly show up unannounced. They scan their surroundings, wondering, "Are you here? Are you okay?" Each trigger jolts them with intense emotional responses, from longing to a fleeting sadness or emotional numbness. Emotional regulation. On the surface, they seem composed, but beneath that exterior, avoidants are working overtime to regulate their emotional expression. Each time your name is mentioned or a mutual contact brings you up, they clamp down on their feelings. They can't afford a flicker of vulnerability. Smiles must be controlled. Tone must stay even. They will say, "I'm okay," but internally they're battling a storm. Feelings of regret, longing, shame. Over time, this internal suppression becomes exhausting, a chronic tension from hiding what they truly feel. Secret shrine. In a hidden corner of their life, avoidants build what we call a secret shrine, a private archive of your connection. It could be screenshots, a gift tucked away in a drawer, a saved song playlist. Nothing public, nothing on display, but equally, nothing removed. This is their safe harbor, where they can quietly keep a piece of you without exposing themselves to emotional risk. It provides a private bond, a reminder that you still matter, even if they won't admit it openly. Competing narratives. Finally, the most painful part. Avoidants live amidst two conflicting internal narratives. On one side, they tell themselves, "You're not that important," that moving on independently is better and safer. On the other, they can't shake the truth. You were the one who let them in emotionally, the one who made them feel vulnerable, the one who stirred something deep. These opposing beliefs, "you don't matter," versus "you meant the world," pull them in both directions. It creates emotional exhaustion and paralysis. They want you, they fear requiring you. They fear intimacy, they yearn for it. And this is the heart-wrenching reality. They're caught between two worlds. Their mind, heart, and memory are stuck. Their regret is real. Their longing is real. Their fear is real. But until they choose to step into wholenesto, face their guilt, embrace vulnerability, and speak honestly, they remain trapped in a silent, self-made prison of conflicted emotions. After navigating the internal turmoil within avoidant minds, regret spirals, trigger hypervigilance, emotional regulation, secret shrines, and competing narratives arrive at a critical realization. This obsession isn't a simple crush, but the fusion of desire and fear. Part 5, the true nature of the obsession, exposes this duality at the heart of avoidant attachment. On one hand, you embody the love they crave, genuine emotion, warmth, empathy, a safe harbor for intimacy. In their eyes, they see in you the raw authenticity of emotional connection. Yet on the other hand, you represent profound fear, the fear of vulnerability, emotional exposure, and loss of control. The closer they get, the more they fear losing the protective armor of emotional detachment. Thus, a paradox emerges. They want to come close, but are terrified of the consequences. This interplay of longing and fear breeds a type of unhealthy obsession. They don't love you with flowers and declarations. They love you with absent presence, emotional barriers, and the relentless awareness that you remain lodged in their heart though they cannot allow full access. This is not healthy love. It is an internal conflict driven by fear. I want you, but I'm afraid I can't handle losing control. This explains their inability to fully disconnect, yet also to fully commit. They vacillate between needing you and fleeing from you. Their pattern often reflects this emotional tug, calling one day, retreating the next, showing up emotionally, then disappearing. This emotional seesaw is exhausting for the man, heartbreaking for you. But it also indicates that your presence matters deeply. Even when they appear indifferent, they can't fully relinquish you. Recognizing this is transformative. It helps you understand that while you awaken a deep longing, you cannot cure their fear. Healing them is not your burden, it's yours. You deserve a healthy relationship built on mutual emotional availability and security, not to serve as the solution to someone's internal conflict. Before moving into part 6, what to do with this truth? Let it be clear, you deserve love that brings freedom and safety, not a halfway obsession. Understanding the true nature of this tangled longing grants you power, the freedom to choose how you respond. You can step away, you can stay, or you can stay but on your own terms. And in doing so, you no longer surrender your life to the limbo created by someone else's fear and desire. Now that we've understood the true nature of the obsession, a collision of longing and fear, and recognized it as a form of half-love that isn't emotionally healthy, we're ready to step into part 6, a way out for the avoidant, and for you. Because real clarity only arrives when the avoidant dares to step out of their emotional darkness, and you, the person entangled in that conflict, can give yourself the freedom and self-respect to escape the suffocating emotional loop. First, the avoidant can only begin to break free once they dare to face their real feelings, the fear, the past wounds, the emotional paralysis they've buried for so long. They must be brave enough to ask themselves, why does my fear of pain outweigh my desire for connection? Why do I keep building walls between us? Only when they admit that they're still adequate, even if it terrifies them, can they begin to step out of the cycle of playing with feelings they're too afraid to handle. They must realize that memory won't heal them, and fantasy only offers a safe illusion that delays real healing. To truly show up and face you again, they must either commit to their authentic emotions or walk away with honesty. For you, the one affected by this obsession, you must wake up to a vital truth. they're not yet emotionally mature enough to love you in a healthy way. They may reappear with messages of regret, occasional gestures, or cryptic reactions on your social media, but that's not enough. That's not proof that they can hold your heart the way it deserves. When someone isn't ready, you have every right to choose not to wait, because waiting is giving your life away to a one-sided hope, and your heart deserves to be met fully. So what's the way out for you? First, you must take back the power you unknowingly handed over. Every time they disappeared or reappeared, they controlled your emotional weather. Now it's time to reclaim it. Start by not waiting for the next message. Don't let their activity on your screen dictate the value of your day. Instead, immerse yourself in the life that's yours, your friendships, your growth, your passions, and don't shrink any of it for the chance of their return. Then comes the bigger choice, not between two people, but between two versions of yourself. The one waiting for someone not ready to love, or the one who chooses to love themselves with freedom and dignity. The more you stay quiet, loyal, or available in their absence, the easier it is for the avoidant to leave things unfinished, because they've gotten used to you always being emotionally on hold. But when you shift, when you say, "I choose to walk with myself," and no longer chase responses or breadcrumbs, you break their internal logic that silence keeps the door open. Only when you walk away will you know your strength without demand. Only then, if they are truly brave, will they come back in full presence. And if they return with confusion or half steps, you get to decide. You get to say, "I need emotional clarity, not emotional convenience." If they say, "I still think about you, but I'm scared," you can reply, "I understand, but I'm building something that needs emotional maturity." That's not cruelty. That's self-respect. By protecting your dignity, you set the tone for what kind of love you allow in your life, not as a reaction to the past, but as a boundary for your future. At this point, the way out becomes clear for both sides. If the avoidant faces their fear, they might heal their obsession and either come back mature or release you cleanly. And you, now seeing the full picture, don't have to sit in limbo anymore. You get to move, live, and love yourself fully. And that freedom, that self-chosen path, is the most beautiful ending of all, whether you walk it together or in separate directions. Loving someone with an avoidant attachment style is not a simple story. It often feels like walking through fog where you sense something real, something sincere, but never gain full clarity. They silently observe you, obsess over you in secret, feel jealous when you move on, and hold on to mementos, but they never truly step toward you. They don't offer you the kind of love that's whole and healthy. And in the midst of this push-pull dynamic, it's easy to forget that you are also a human being, deserving of clear, present, and steady love. The hardest part of being with an avoidant isn't losing the mitts, not losing yourself when they're not mature enough to keep you. You can love them, you can even understand them, but you cannot heal someone who refuses to heal themselves. And if they only come back when you glow up, when you detach, when you stop waiting, ask yourself, do they love you or just fear losing their imagined version of you? You deserve a love that shows up, a love that's consistent, a love that doesn't run when things get vulnerable, a love that doesn't just live in their mind but expresses itself through actions, presence, and bravery. So if you find yourself at a crossroads, remember this: real love never asks you to shrink in order to be accepted. Real love lifts you up, keeps you safe, and helps you grow. And if the avoidant person in your life can't give you that, even if they obsess over you, it's okay to walk away. Not because you weren't enough for them, but because you are already enough to no longer live in emotional half measures. You're not the backup plan. You're not the almost. You're the main character in your own story, and it's time your love life reflects that truth.